The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
The Tigers landed another one.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On the day where Brian Kelly and his staff landed five-star defensive end Lamar Brown, one of the biggest gets in this entire class, this number 7 overall prospect in the country in the on-3 composite, a kid from U-High in Baton Rouge that LSU's recruited for 4 years. If you're an everydayer, you know all this because you watched the previous episode, or maybe you were with us live whenever we went live after Lamar Brown committed. But the day was not done, not even close. If you were with us earlier in the week, we told you there were three prospects within LSU had on the table announcing on Thursday. Lamar Brown, it went the Tigers' way, and that's a massive, massive win. But there were two others. DeAnthony Lafayette out of Orlando and Jamarian Carlton out of Temple, Texas. Well, it was DeAnthony Lafayette who was up after Lamar Brown, and he did, in fact, pick the LSU Tigers. So if you missed it, we'll give you the deets here on DeAnthony Lafayette. He is 6'1", 230 pounds. He is a 3-star. And I know the drill. 3-star Matt, his national ranking, 699. What are we really talking about here? Why is LSU taking a 3-star edge? Well, I want to remind you of what Shea Dixon said earlier this week. He was with us earlier this week, as he is every week, to talk recruiting. And Shea talked about DeAnthony Lafayette. Listen to what Shea said earlier this week.
There'll be three guys, D-linemen, D-ends, edges, who announced Thursday with LSU hats on the table. I feel the best about DeAnthony Lafayette. I put a pick in. He's a kid coming out of Lake Nona in Florida who, right after Vandy, Kevin Peoples and Baker offered him, and he had not been a highly touted recruit at that point, but he had a just unbelievable year stat-wise. And then once they got out to see him in person, it was like, okay, he's 6'1", 6'1", but long arms, can cover, can play that stand-up outside linebacker kind of edge spot. And they've continued to recruit him, brought him in on visits. And Miami will have a hat on the table. Oklahoma's really pressing. But as long as anything doesn't go wildly crazy in the next 48 hours, I do think that you add one more to the list there with him and Lafayette.
Y'all, what do I say all the time when it comes to recruits? I am not so much interested in the star ranking or the rating or anything like that. I am more interested in who has offered, who is pursuing you. That is more telling to me than what a scouting service slaps as a rating on a player. Look, I can run through that with Lamar Brown, but it's everybody. He's a 5-star, top 10 player in the country. Everyone offered him. So look at DeAnthony Lafayette. Who did you beat out? Miami? He was recruited, by the way, by Jason Taylor. That would be Pro Football Hall of Fame defensive end Jason Taylor, who was recruiting him to Miami. A kid from Florida, by the way, in Orlando. Oklahoma, whose head coach is Brent Venables, a longtime successful defensive coordinator. Do you think Brent Venables knows what he's looking for in talent on the defensive side of the ball? And then there's LSU. Blake Baker was the primary recruiter on DeAnthony Lafayette. Do you trust Blake Baker and his evaluation and what he's looking for in a prospect? Oh, by the way, Florida and Boston College and Illinois and Pitt and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt and Wake Forest all offered as well. Penn State, there was a bunch of others, G5 schools. But the bottom line is, when you've got interest from LSU, Oklahoma, Miami, Florida, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Illinois, that tells the story on this kid. Maybe the measurables didn't pop for everybody. Maybe he wasn't interested in everybody. But he blew up in his junior season. The coaches thought enough to go see him. They saw him and said, want him. Let's see how he plays his senior year. Maybe that 3-star becomes a 4-star. Maybe the 700 ranking becomes 300. Who knows? But the bottom line is, I say it all the time. Do you trust the coach's evaluation? If you do, you should be excited about this one. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is the positional group, right? Because with Lamar Brown and now DeAnthony Lafayette, and a week ago, you got Trenton Henderson. That is now 3 edge players in this class of commitments for LSU. And this is really significant, y'all. Don't lose sight of this. It's really significant because we are looking at a year at defensive end or edge this year that kind of rivals what LSU had to do at linebacker last year. I say last year, this most recent class, the 2025 class. LSU signed 5 linebackers in the class of 2025. They had to. You're going to lose Whit Weeks to the draft. You're going to lose West Weeks to eligibility. Harold Perkins is going to be gone as well. Look, you're going to return Devon Keys. You're going to return Tylen Singleton. But after that, you had nobody. So you went and signed 5 linebackers. And you've got guys that are super versatile. You've got C.J. Ross coming in. You got Zach Weeks, the third of the Weeks brothers. You got Keelan Moses, who probably projects at that star position. So, you went out there, Jaden Breaker, you went out and signed 5 linebackers because you needed to fortify your depth there. And it looks like that's what they're doing here at edge for 26. Remember, you went into the portal and you signed Pyburn and Jamari Butler and Patrick Payton, and you got Gabe Relaford back, and you got some other bodies there, right? You got Kalaj Cobbins, you got Dylan Carpenter, you've got, the incoming signing class as well. But the point is, in 2026, the only experienced prospect returning is going to be Gabe Relaford. After that, you're going to be super thin, just like you're looking at Devon Keys at linebacker in 26, and then a lot of young players. So you had to fortify your numbers, and that's what they're doing. They've got 3 already with Lamar Brown, Trenton Henderson, 2 5-stars, by the way, and now with DeAnthony Lafayette. So, and they may not be done there as well. They had a hat on the table for Jamari and Carlton, the prospect out of Temple, Texas. He did not pick LSU. He picked Baylor, as Shea told us earlier in the week that he would. But that's 3, and they may not be done at the edge spot as well. So we'll see how all that transpires. But, man, it is so impressive what LSU is doing right now and how they're putting this together. I had a chance to talk to Sam Spiegelman, and Sam is the national recruiting analyst for Rivals, who just got bought by On3, and so they're merged again. But I had a chance to talk to Sam Spiegelman about this class. Again, this is a national recruiting analyst who doesn't just cover LSU, covers the national recruiting scene.
Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drink, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
What's the only thing better than getting the commitment from your biggest recruit of the summer? Beating the Texas Longhorns.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears.
It has become official. Jamarion Carlton, the 4-star defensive lineman from Temple High, has made his commitment to the Baylor Bears. Texas, LSU, see you later. Jamarion Carlton is a Baylor Bear. What? Breaking news. Oh, big breaking news. Texas actually never wanted him. And Baylor's completely irrelevant, and something about Art Briles. That's what's coming across for Locked On Longhorns. Yeah, 247 Longhorn. Yep, they're all saying that. Jamarion Carlton just picked Baylor over Texas and LSU. How does that happen? How does that happen? The rest of the college football world says. Well, if you've been keeping up with Locked On Baylor, you have kind of an idea. And Jamarion Carlton made it pretty clear as well. He said, they all showed me love and all made me feel like I was the main priority, Carlton said, of the Bears contingent of coaches and front office personnel, according to Rivals. I mean, how many times have we heard that before? This staff makes the kids feel like a priority. They don't sweep in at the last second and tell them how much money you're going to make when you come here. They see them early in the development process. That is something that has been an absolute trademark from Keenan Hall since day one, since he got on board, and is clearly the case across Baylor's entire recruiting staff. They find these kids early and they sell them on a dream. Sometimes that doesn't work. In this case, it does. Carlton said that coaching staff there and what they're building, it's nice down there. Whole staff made me feel like I was a priority and that getting me there was the main thing. And that was big regardless. It's home and it feels like home. How about that? Temple, of course, not that far away from Waco. But when you're battling with the Texas Longhorns, it's about as far away from Waco as it is to Austin. So you're battling a hometown team either way. That's a battle that, to conventional college football minds, Baylor should lose. And they didn't. And again, I made the joke about it. It didn't actually come across my timeline from Locked On Longhorns, although they're kind of stressed out too. Pray for Locked On Longhorns. But there will be Texas fans in the comments saying, oh, we didn't want him anyway. You guys are getting hyped over a 4-star. Yes, we are. We're getting hyped over a top 50 recruit in the country. Oh, you kidding, man, over a 5-star? Yeah. Top 50 recruit in the entire country. And he actually loves the way that Dave Aranda coaches and the style. I love that. And as I said on yesterday's show, which if you haven't seen it, check out that segment. I dropped it on Wednesday night when Baylor was crystal balled to get Jamarion Carlton. What he does is fills a big need that Baylor hasn't had in a couple of years. Return of the Jack. Once again, return of the Jack. Top of the world. The Jack position, man. That is a Dave Aranda specialty. And when he first came here in 2020 and 2021, both years Baylor had great defenses. 2020, obviously the team stunk, but their defense was fantastic. They had great production from the Jack position. And they haven't had that the last couple of years, man. Like Garmin Randolph lacked Jack. Sorry, Jamarion Carlton's not going to do that. There's a reason why he's one of the most sought after recruits in all of America. 57 tackles, 11 TFLs, 5 sacks, and a forced fumble. For a Temple Wildcats team in 6A that, not for nothing, they went from pretty horrible in 2023 to a playoff team in 2024, thanks in large part to Jamarion Carlton being an absolute game wrecker on the defensive side of the ball. That's what Baylor's getting, man, a game wrecker. When was the last time they had one of those, man? Terrell Bernard, Jalen Petrie. You were lucky enough to have both of them on the same team. That was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. I don't even know if they have one on this year's team. They have good defensive players. Don't get me wrong. Siaki Ika, who last played in 2022, could kind of wreck a running game, but they haven't had a game wrecker. No way, man. No way. And the fact that this group consistently is recruiting the defensive side of the ball really well. We pay attention mostly to the offensive side, but that defensive side has been steady growth over the last 2-3 recruiting windows here. And that's something obviously Baylor needs to get better at in the short term, but you're seeing a vision for the long term. And you're also seeing a vision on offense for the long term. Jamarion Carlton becomes the biggest recruit in this 2026 class, but he overtakes Quinn Murphy in that. A quarterback. So you're doing pretty well at pretty much the two most important positions in football. Like, however you slice it, the top 3 most important positions, when you look at who is drafted number 1 overall and how NFL teams build their team, it's quarterback, it's left tackle, it's defensive end pass rusher. I don't know what the left tackle thing is looking like in the class of 2026. I'll be totally honest with you guys. But you have gotten bona fide studs at quarterback and pass rush. That is so huge, man. That is so huge. That is foundational for your team going forward. And again, I'm not saying, like, if Dave Aranda has a bad year this year and they don't make the most out of this team, his job will be on the line. But what he sold Mac Rhodes on going into the 2024 season is we're going to become much better and much more competitive on the recruiting trail. And damned if the dude hasn't done that. Even for some of you Dave Aranda haters, some of you who think he should still be fired, and I get your justification, by the way. I don't think he should be fired at this point. I was calling for his job in 2023, and I understand your justification now. Oh, one good stretch, and all of a sudden, I understand that. But he has delivered on this big time, man. And in the last 2 weeks, they've gone from barely in the top 60 to now in the top 40 in the recruiting rankings in all of America. And we're just getting started here. Like, we're just entering. We get the Jordan Holmes commitment, or excuse me, Jordan Clay commitment is tomorrow. I don't know that they're going to get him. It's not as sure a thing as this Jamarion Carlton thing felt, but this thing could continue to skyrocket. Your two actual highest rated recruits in this class, both named Jamarion. How about that? Jamarion Carlton, Jamarion Vincent, London Smith, Jordan Deck, Davion Peters, Quinn Murphy, all these 4-star guys, man, lining up to come down to Baylor, and they're saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing every time. They're saying, these coaches were on me early. They were the first, they were my first Power 4 offer. They were the first big time offer that I got that was actually paying attention to me. This, that, and the other. They were talking to me from sophomore year. Dave Aranda was going to London Smith's basketball games when he was a freshman. Like, that's the first thing they say. The second thing they say is they're building something here. Now, again, when a kid says that, and he's choosing Baylor over Texas, over LSU, Quinn Murphy's picking them over SEC schools, that tells me that they're not the recruits that can be bought. Okay? I don't mean that in its most cynical sense. Obviously, these kids want to make some money if they can playing college football. I will never fault them for that, ever. And it's tough to fault even the kids that go in the transfer portal and leave for more money, unless they agree to be your point guard next year. I digress. But what that tells me, when this kid's saying they were on me early and he's turning down these two powerhouse schools in Texas and LSU, that tells me he's saying these guys swooped in. They offered me a ton of cash and a good team, by the way, both those very good programs right now, both with chances to go to the college football playoff. But he's saying, I think I can stay even closer to home. I can build something special. I can go to the playoff with this team. And they made me feel like a priority. It's a massive win for Baylor, man. I know it gets old hearing it, and at some point we're going to get past it. Hopefully. That would be a great thing for this program. But anytime you are beating the Texas Longhorns and the LSU Fighting Tigers for a 4-star recruit, anytime you're beating out Brian Kelly and Steve Sarkisian for a blue chip recruit, a top 50 recruit in America, that's still a massive deal. Massive. Longhorns punching air right now. Yeah, baby. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. How big a commitment is this for the Baylor Bears and the future of that defense?
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Look, they're saving you money already.
people don't seem to understand just how good Colorado is going to be this upcoming year.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes.
Big 12 media, or Big 12 coaches, excuse me, they didn't want to do a preseason poll, which I understand. They absolutely, I guess, what's the opposite of nailing something? They biffed, they whiffed, they were abysmal, they swung and missed, they absolutely nuked in the worst way possible their rankings last year. They had Arizona State. They had Utah, I think, was the favorite, and they were around last place. And they had Arizona State around last place, and they won. So clearly the head coaches were like, we don't understand anything about anybody else's team here, and we don't want to do that again. We don't want to give them that ammo. And I also think, and I don't know if anyone's going to say this out loud, when your own conference when Arizona State wins the conference as the projected last place team, I think a lot of people, that storyline overcame all of their success. It was like, the last place team wins the Big 12. That's how bad the Big 12 is. Like, the last place team came from 16th to 1st. And it's like, what does that mean for the Big 12? Like, I think it just sort of, in a way, hurt the Big 12 more than it helped them. But our good friend over at Locked On College Football, Spencer McLaughlin, he put together his power rankings for the Big 12. And I don't know if you guys are going to like where Colorado is. So I'm going to put it up on the screen and read it to those who are listening. Let's talk about it. Similar to mine, actually. And I'll sort of run you through mine and his, and we'll go through the difference because I do think there was some crossover here. He has Texas Tech, Arizona State 1 and 2, which I agreed with. That was my 1 and 2. K-State 3, which I agreed with. He has Iowa State 4. I had TCU 4. He has Baylor 5. I had Baylor 5. He has Utah at 6. I have Iowa State at 6. He has TCU at 7. I obviously had them at 4. I have Utah at 7. I had Colorado at 8. And then he has Houston at 8. Kansas at 9. BYU at 10. Colorado 11. 12 Cincinnati. Oklahoma State 13. Arizona 14. West Virginia 15. UCF 16. So clearly we aligned on our bottom handful of teams were pretty similar, just mixed around. With that being said, it's the Colorado for me, right? It's I think it's the disrespect to the Buffs and sort of where he has them ranked. Because let's just pull up the rankings from last season. I think this is going to really help explain why I don't have Colorado higher. I think in the Big 12, because it is so complex, because it is so, I guess you could say, because it's so even, and there's so many teams that could win it. I think it makes it really difficult for certain teams to just like outright claim a spot, right? So I think last year, we go into that final week of the season, and there were mathematically 1, 2, 3. I think there was like 6 or 7 teams that mathematically had a chance to make it to the Big 12 championship, right? So I have Colorado at 8, which if you look at 8th place last year, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kansas State. They were 9 and 4. They were a couple things away from going their way, right? So just because I predict Colorado to be in that 8th spot doesn't mean I'm like, if you told me Colorado finished 8th, I'm like, okay, they went 8 and 4, 9 and 3, right? That's sort of what I would expect. Spencer, on the other hand, he has him at 11th. Now, if you go down to 11th this past year, that's in the Cincinnati range, right? That's in the Utah range. That's in that 3 and 6 in conference play, 5 and 7, 4 and 8 overall record, right? That's where I disagree because I think he's underestimating how good this Colorado team is. I think Deion Sanders said it best yesterday because they asked him, how are you going to replace Travis and Shedeur? And rather than being like, you know what, we got one of the best quarterbacks in the country in the transfer portal, and Julian Lewis coming in. Caden Salter. We have Julian Lewis, who's a 5-star. Corners, we have DJ McKinney. We have Preston Hodge. We landed Tion Parks. We landed the Wyoming transfer. We landed all these guys. It's like, he's like, yeah, we're not going to replace them with one guy, with 2 guys, right? We're going to, and I like to use this phrase a lot when I talk about replacing Travis Hunter. You have to moneyball, right? You can't just get someone who's going to go give you Travis Hunter numbers. No, you get people, right? You get people to replace that production combined. Like, it doesn't mean someone has to go in there, rack up 15 touchdowns. It's like, okay, if Travis Hunter had 15 receiving touchdowns last year, we need one guy to get 5, or one guy to get 3 or 4, and then another guy to get 2, another guy to or 2 guys to get 7 or 8, right? That also works. So you just have to figure out a way to manufacture production with multiple bodies, because you're not going to get production like that from one individual. And I think it'd be unfair to sort of expect one individual to to produce that. Going back to Spencer's rankings here, what kind of befuddles me is BYU at 10. Now, I don't know when he made this, but I'm assuming he made this after the Jake Retzloff incident. So he's telling me that a BYU team whose quarterback, obviously we don't know Colorado's quarterback, but I think Julian Lewis would be they'd both be automatic starters at BYU. That's all I'm going to say, right? I think BYU may have a better defense. They have a good chunk of guys returning, but I don't know how BYU is ahead of them. I don't trust Kansas. He's very high on Houston. I think Houston's going to be better. I don't know if they're going to be the 8th team in the conference. And yeah, I think that's sort of my beef with it, right? The other 7 teams I had above Colorado, like, I think Colorado should be that 8th team, 7th or 8th. And that this is preseason. Obviously, a lot of things could change. Obviously, based on however they do, my opinion will change. Obviously, I haven't seen them play together. Coach Prime hasn't even met some of the new players. He said this yesterday. So there's a lot of things Colorado still has to figure out. That being said, I don't love Spencer's rankings. I do agree with his 1 through 3. Honestly, 1 through 6 isn't bad. It's when we get to 7 through 12 where it's like, it's probably a crapshoot for 1, but I think he has Colorado on the wrong end of it. I really do. So I think disrespectful, some might say. I think it's wrong. I think Colorado's going to have a better offensive line. I think they're going to have a better run game. I think the defense, pass rush wise, kind of a tongue twister, I think they'll be pretty good. I don't know if they'll lead the Big 12 in sacks again, but I think they'll be around there. And I think this is probably the best secondary in the Big 12. So linebackers, I'm very iffy on, but I do think that Colorado has a really good defense. I think the offense is going to be not what we saw last year, but I think it's going to be good in different ways. So I expect Colorado to get a strong start to the year and prove a lot of people wrong.